Hey, everyone.
Exactly.
They probably said something.
Really.
Yes, but
Well, that's gonna be expensive. Product. Like, yeah, I mean, just used to. SQL plus hard to develop right now, like 300 for the speeds. That means around like 2% of the speed, yeah.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Good.
Yep, we can hear you.
You could maybe do that for like a daily run. Yeah.
Get started.
Yeah, sorry, I was. Next to Zoom, but I was not looking at it, but it's fine. Yeah, but you said you did. There will be much less to be affected. One of the areas I'm gonna be. Going to use with the politician of the. Just action. Okay.
yeah, sorry about that.
I heard you Zoom form is making it, making me, Chiamando il Parlamento prima di tutto. Dove da fare? Ma devo pagamento, ci devo dire il pagamento devo dire. Non è che non avevo fatto di aprire. Invece ho solo fatto la mazza di non comprare delle cose. Something that I didn't consider, but I don't promote this. All the time. They gave me. I was just gonna sit here and talk, obviously, someone should tell the whatever department makes you.
Get started.
All right, and for some reason I can't, when I not go to the slide, when I turn this into a slideshow, all the text starts working, so. I'm just gonna keep it like this. Everything, it's not very much. So yeah, just to give a quick brief intro. My name is Luke. This is called Next Steps for Single Executable Applications, or SEAs. And I just wanted to say that I've not contributed to their development yet, but when I was going to attend the summit, we are very interested in using this. I'm very interested in using this at work and want to do everything I can to contribute and kind of help move it forward. So I just scheduled this a short thing. I think we just have 30 minutes, and I was hoping to go over quick preview of like what I see as some open issues that I found that I think are like the most important to address, and then some larger features, just kind of a roll up of what I've seen going through all the open issues and discussions and everything on the single executable repo as well as in the node repo. And then kind of just open it up for discussion, questions, other questions or comments that people have. So apologize. The real title of this problem probably should have included the question mark because I don't have the answers. So these are the top things that I've seen on the issue tracker, and a bit selfishly, these are the things that I would like to see and would make it easiest for me to adopt this, adopt single or SEAs. And one thing I wanted to add is that, so I work at Volt where I'm just making a CLI. So obviously, this is to make, turn our CLI into a binary. And right now I've experimented with a lot of solutions, and we do all of our development in Node. But currently the thing that we ship to users is compiled with Dino, which only because we just hit a few of these blockers. And so obviously for us, that's not an ideal state to like do all of our development in one runtime and then ship a different runtime to users. So we are very invested in like being able to have a similar experience on Node. And so a few of these issues that I'm just going to click through. One is ESM support. I believe currently it's still accurate that SEAs require a single CJS file. And I actually don't see the single file part as like a huge issue. I think I've actually looked through the issue tracker, and not that many folks, not that many users are bringing up bundling. It seems like everyone, there's a number of different bundlers out there. Everyone is okay using their own, but so for us, we're using ES build as the bundle step, but have a number of like top level awaits and import expressions in our graph that currently don't work with SEAs. Another thing that would be really nice is having node options. And so this is one to just be able to bake the node options into the single executable. And then another one, another open issue to freeze them, which would be helpful because a lot of times a single executable has to call itself again or call other scripts. And so having the node option set for the lifetime of that and not have the scripts be able to alter them would also be really helpful. And then this one's this is not a blocker because all this stuff is currently possible, but just having a more streamlined API or a programmatic API, I think would help adoption a lot. If you look at other runtimes, it's like a top level command you could run and you get the binary as output. And so I think this example code right here is something that most people have written, or this is kind of like an example API, but most people have written, some exec sync calls in JavaScript in order to get their single executable application built. As for some larger features, these are, again, things I've gone through the issue and found that have kind of the most comments or that the most people are talking about. So the number one thing is virtualized file system or some sort of support for that, whether that is with hooks or URL schemes, and a question for how that would support native add-ons. Again, I don't see this as like a blocker for us to adopt it currently, but I do think that this is would benefit from like maybe a separate discussion on the issue tracker or somewhere else of like how these should be handled. But the reason I put them on a separate slide is because I feel like they wouldn't hinder us adopting it right now, but they are like one of the most important features. And then bundling as well. I did find one discussion of it, but a bunch of people on the issue just said like, I use ES Build or I use some other bundler, which is, I'm not convinced that Node would have to own that part of it. That bundling would have to be in core as well for single executable applications to be successful. And I think these are all, it's native add-ons is the only one that would, if you are doing native add-ons right now, you'd have to find a way around that. Our product currently isn't, and this wouldn't have to be solved only with the virtualized file system, but it is probably the best option or the best way to solve that, which has been tracked in this discussion by Darshan. And then I'll put these slides into the issue as well, or into the summit issue, just because it has this is where I got all these links, or there's a bunch of open issues on this stuff, and a fair amount of people asking the common questions of like, is this ready yet? Is this ready yet? Which is not the reason I did this session, is mostly to ask some, a few open questions, like what is the best way that, like, me and my company that we can contribute today, and is that just through finding the issues and shipping the code? Is it helping to facilitate working group meetings, which I know have happened in the past? Is it something else entirely? So that's it for just some brief slides. Wanted to give a chance for anyone else who has other questions about this, or I'm most interested in other people who are using it and the blockers they've hit, or the people who have worked on this stuff and kind of know some of the answers to these things.
Hi, I think I can chime in on this. So it's great that you did this kind of compilation on the kinds of things that we need to do. And I also did some of this work on my end. So SCA is the kind of thing that I don't think most users of Node would actually use. So this is probably the kind of thing that companies would benefit from. So I tried to reach out to a couple of companies, and I tried to understand the kinds of things that they really want to see in SCAs. And what you observed is very much correct. So I'm maintaining some notes here. So these are the critical changes that I found that most folks need. So injecting CLI arguments. So people want to use the Node features that are in the latest versions of Node, but those would probably require the experimental flag. So that's where it gets kind of tricky, because you can't really do that if you don't have the option of injecting the CLI options. So that's something that they really want to see. And then ESM and TypeScript support is also something that they would love to see. And as you mentioned, programmatic, like the programmatic API is also great. I think it's good for having this as a nice user experience, but it would be tricky to do in the current state, because currently we use PostJect to do the injection, and PostJect is huge. It's basically a WebAssembly compilation of the Leaf library with some binding code. So since it's so huge, it's not really something that you can easily put into the Node executable. So that's probably not something we can do at the moment. But if we trim down PostJect into something that's really tiny, so something like libsui that Dino is doing, then this might be possible. Like we could do node -- compile and it would just work, which is really exciting. And apart from that, there are a couple of other things, which is sourceless support. So PKG does support that already, but I'll tell you a bit about PKG. So PKG has been deprecated after Node SCA came out, and then the maintainers of PKG have created a fork of PKG, and it's like a userland thing, and they're maintaining it on their own. And it's currently blocked on the latest versions of Node because of one issue. So one of the critical needs of PKG is to support sourceless SCAs. But doing that right now is not really possible, because when you create your app using PKG, it creates binaries for other operating systems as well, which you're not running on right now. So the way it does such a thing is it uses the code cache. They patch Node as well as V8 with some of their own code that hasn't been upstreamed yet. And this is really unstable, and that's the whole reason why they're blocked right now. So making this possible would require some upstream efforts in Node and in V8. So I was looking into this in the past, but I wasn't able to justify much time after this. So these are the critical things that we need to do in SCA to make this stable. So this is a what, in my opinion, that what needs to happen for this, for SCA to be a success. And now the next question is the how. So for that, I can say that this is not the kind of thing that should be worked on for free. Like we all know that PKG exists in Vercel. They had full-time engineers working on this, so it's not something that people can just work on for free. So I have been in contact with a couple of companies who are already using SEA and are planning to use SEA in the future. And this is how I got this list from them. And I'm also available for part-time contracting. So in case y'all are super interested in this, you can just fund me and I'll do this. So that's my spiel, and I'll let the next person speak. Thanks.
That's me. Yeah, I was just going to ask, has it already been ruled out or discussed at all that sometimes you want to be able to call programs that may or may not be written in other languages as part of your single executable archive? For example, at Bloomberg, we kind of, a few years ago, we ruled out all these Node.js, we ruled out a few of the Node.js specific solutions for this, PKG. I can't even remember the names of the other ones, but because we have use cases where we're a polyglot company, so we have a lot of tools and programs and stuff written in other languages. And for example, my favorite example to use is just anything that wants to call Git or maybe FFmpeg. They're doing media transcoding or things like that. Has this been discussed at all for SEA? Because I'm kind of curious. Like I know you said that native add-ons are kind of something on the long-term roadmap.
Yeah, that was my question. Do you mean like bundling it, like making it a native add-on, or just like kind of calling out to it with exec or something else?
Calling out to it, but I think that the subtext to my question is like, are we kind of reinventing containerization and like making it a single file that you can just double click and run? Like, is it? Because inevitably, if you want to, if you want to have a tool that, like I said, uses Git or FFmpeg, something like that, you're not going to have a way to bundle this if it's not pure JavaScript, right?
Yeah. I've only mostly thought about this from the context of a CLI where if you're running it in a terminal, it could call out to those things.
So escape the sandbox.
Yeah. And so that wouldn't be like having that design constraint for CLIs doesn't like make sense. Like most of the Dino examples. But I'm just saying, I just haven't thought about that use case.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
to answer your question, no.
What I see on NPM with a lot of these tools is it's like they just sort of expect you to magically make either the command line available.
Yeah.
It's not expressible as like an NPM package dependency or anything like that. Or if it's a native add-on, they just, it might be an implementation detail of an implementation detail of an implementation detail, but as an application, you suddenly expected to NPM install time make sure that you've got the FFmpeg headers available. So yeah, like for if I just want to ship a tool that I don't know, does some media stuff, and I don't want to place the burden of making that FFmpeg dependency just somehow available on the system. I need a way to bundle it really, and container like OCI is kind of very close, but it doesn't tick the box of like a file that you download and double click and it just runs.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's talked about that yet.
I don't think we have any issues to cover that in any of the repos at the moment.
Okay. Anyone else?
Someone else have that?
Oh, I resent it.
Oh,
That was me.
okay.
Yesterday, yesterday, Marco and I was just having to discuss the SEA, the build flow, and we're wondering why it has to be done in a separate command instead of being part of the node executable. Because as far as I can tell, well, I don't know much about Postgres, but it looks like it just uses some dependency to do a bit of binary surgery. And the part where it gets big might come from the fact that it's WASM, like the command that gets distributed via NPN is WASM. So if as far as I can tell, if it's just built in and we don't go through the WASM layer, it's probably not that big, but that's my guess. Just curious why it has to be separate.
I think the main reason is because of the leaf dependency that we have. It's a really huge dependency, and I guess that's the reason why the WebAssembly is also huge. So that's why it probably wouldn't be an acceptable thing to bundle that into Node at the moment. But we could definitely trim it down into something that's super simple that just does the injection part without too much complications.
Do you have some idea about how big it is? Because, well, it's like purely hand wavy, like imagination. But I suppose like it's just like parsing some binary and then doing some surgery. The code actually gets linked in. Shouldn't be that big, but that's my imagination.
I don't quite have the numbers at the moment, but I know that it's like pretty big. I think it's there somewhere in the project repo, but yeah, I don't have it with
Yeah,
me
I
at
mean,
the moment.
the source code can be big, but we do not actually need to link everything in as long as it's not used by the final code. The linker can trim off all the unused stuff. So just curious whether it's actually as big as we think, or when it actually gets compiled down and linked, it's going to go away by being cut off by the linker.
I think the way you can do that is by passing in some linker flags to CMake when you're compiling Leaf. I believe we tried doing a bit of that in the past, but I don't think we had any substantive improvements there. But yeah, this could be something that we can try to invest in. But yeah, I think it would be a better investment to just create something like libsui, but maybe in just pure JavaScript so that it's easier to use.
Yeah, that's also an option because it's binary surgery. Just
Yeah.
thank you.
I was gonna go next. I can't figure out how to raise my hand while sharing. But Darshan, you said something about sourceless. It is a feature of PKG or something users are trying to do with PKG. Could you say more about what that means? I'm actually not sure.
Sure. So in PKG, when you compile your JavaScript application into an SEA, especially if you're an enterprise and you want to deploy your app to your users, you don't want them to look into the code that's inside the SEA. So currently, it's totally possible to look into whatever code that has been bundled in, like even for the node binary, because everything that you see inside the lib directory, all the JavaScript code, you can see all of that inside the binary. You just open it up in any kind of editor and you'll find the code right there. But this is not something that would be good to do for the business logic. So in order to support that, what PKG does is it creates a code cache out of your code. So there are some options you can set to make this deterministic. And this is not something that can be done out of the box using V8 or Node, either of the two. So they had to patch both V8 as well as like the VM module in Node to support this. And this creates just the V8 code cache, which you can use directly without access to the source code. So that's how it works.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I was familiar with that feature, but only for, I believe it also has some performance benefits at like the increase of the binary size maybe. So I knew of folks using it for that. But I had not thought about the use case of basically, like, making the code not readable. Since the product I'm working on is already open source. So, but yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Gotcha.
I guess shouting out in terms slightly, to what extent does the code cache actually obfuscate other than, as in, I know it's an internal representation, but I wonder if your goal is obfuscation of the original source code and someone was sufficiently motivated if it's a relatively straightforward reverse engineer.
It's actually totally possible to hack it, but it's not straightforward. I might have to search for it a little bit, but there was a blog post that I read in the past that tells you how you can go about doing that. But yeah, it's super complicated.
Looks like we're just at about time. But yeah, I think the notes here are super valuable, and thank you, Darshan, for joining and giving us all your insight into this. I'm probably gonna open an issue on the single executable repo, something about having meetings again, if that, just to keep this conversation going. It has been really positive, I think, and I agree with you that this is something we should that should not be done for free. My employer is willing to have me contribute to this, and you said you found a few others, so hopefully we can bring more people into this conversation and just have momentum for single executable applications, because I think it's a really important feature that even if like a large subset of Node users are not going to use it, I think enough will that it's very beneficial to have some concept of it in core.
Regarding that, I think I can talk about that for just a minute or two.
Yeah.
So when you talk about meetings and turning SEA into a working group, I think working groups are a much more formalized thing, and I'm not pretty sure if SEA is something that qualifies for it. So working groups are for things like releases that probably keep on happening forever. But yeah, I don't have the official docs at the moment, so maybe someone else can take over on that. But yeah, I think there was some discussion in the past about referring to SEAs as working groups, but that's not a thing at the moment. And regarding meetings, we can definitely have things like weekly meetings, but I thought that it would be better to do ad hoc meetings when the needs require, because most of the times it would probably be something like this where no one really has much updates about what to discuss in the meetings. So I don't think it's gonna be super productive at the moment, maybe in the future if we have more updates. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
About the working group part, I think there was like past discussions about the difference between working group and teams is that working groups need to be chartered and dechartered. That's like huge.
Yeah,
It's like unnecessary formality, but I think in recent years we kind of lean to do teams instead, because you don't need to do all those formalities. There are currently like a bunch of different things like and API things and loader things, and which is basically informal as far as I can tell. You just like what I think what typically goes is you have a repository, which you already have. You have a team, a GitHub team that have people that you can ping, and if you need meetings, you create a label across the organization to label like something agenda for collecting, for the automation to collect meeting agenda. And then usually what we do is we tell Michael Thompson to use his automation to automatically create those meeting issues, and people who have Zoom access will just schedule. Like it's probably regularly scheduled, but you need to have people to regularly at the right time, host meetings. So that's basically what it is as far as meeting, as far as a team goes.
Okay.
I think that's, well, I don't know if we have documents about how to do things, but I think teams are pretty informal, like basically what you want to do. Whereas working group is like, sure.
That's a team is exactly what I had in mind, and I was just using the wrong word for working group. I had seen it in prior issues, so yeah, I'm not on the team currently. I'll add myself to the team, and I'm not looking to schedule anything that's happening weekly, but just to allow for more synchronous communication when we do have things. So
I think what typically happens is that people will have a Slack channel, and then you might have a label that you can search for to track things, and kind of depends on what the team wants, but you can like start with that, like a channel, and then maybe some label, and then when you have enough labels and we could talk about, you have meetings.
FYI, like organically, most of the discussion regarding SEAs have like happened in the public in the issue trackers. But the Slack channel was open because someone in the SEA team thought that it would be good to do, but they're not active anymore. And the Slack channel isn't super active either. So I think having things in the issues and discussions is nice.
One small thing that the virtual file system thing has also come up in the context of zip archives. One of the add archive support.
I did see that.
There's use cases
Yeah.
for that.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear you properly.
Could you speak up again?
Yeah, so someone a while ago brought up virtual file systems in the context of adding zip archive support. There's multiple use cases.
Oh yeah, I know about that. So Mile Neeson, the person from Yarn, I believe, he opened a PR to add support for zip. But I think that PR has stalled. So I think we should just vote as the TSC. I'll try to add the TSC agenda issue labeled to that issue, and we can make progress on that.
Yeah, that's all I had. I think that's all the time we had to. Is that right? We were going to 11?
Yeah.
Okay. But I will put these slides into the issue, if that's helpful. It just has just to collect the links that we talked about today. And then if anyone else, Darshan, you mentioned a few things that you would look for. If you have links to those, I just think gathering a little bit of context at this point is always helpful. And then continuing on in the issue tracker from there.
Sounds good.
So the next session is embedding Umdichi, and it's Mateo's session.
So, okay, should I join the Zoom or the mic is picking me up, okay?
Oh, yeah, you can just speak through the mic in Zoom.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Okay. No.
Okay.
Mute your laptop.
Hello. Hi. Okay, here I am. You can hear me from the other side. Okay, the mic is there. Fantastic. Okay, so this session we have I don't have slides. I've been lazy, so I don't have slides. Okay, but I'm going to screen share the reason why we have this session and what we need to decide about. Okay, so we have okay, let me do that. Screen share. Just a a second. Yeah, okay, let's do this. Okay, here we go. So this session was kickstarted by James Nell. Hi, James. Are you there? Yeah, you are there. Okay, hi, James. By opening up an issue marking HTTP client in Node as legacy. Okay. And then and it also followed quite a lot of requests from the community. Now, the problems, why we want to embed Undici in Node to begin with. Okay, Undici is the basis of fetch. Okay. Also, Undici is maintained by Robert Nagy, myself, and more or less everybody that got frustrated by the lack of flexibility of the internal HTTP client of Node.js. Okay, I don't know if you are familiar with the HTTP client of Node.js, but it's essentially of the internals. I recommend you to take a look. Okay, essentially, or not, maybe somebody's not happy about this. Essentially, the only way that is extensible is by essentially hacking stuff on it, or monkey patching is internals, and it uses the socket or TLS connection as its core primitive. This has a lot of problems because we cannot support HTTP2, for example. We cannot make it, it makes it very hard to extend and other things like that. So the solution we came through is a different architecture in Undici, which essentially we have the concept of a client, which is essentially a wrapper over a single socket. You can schedule multiple requests, multiple HTTP requests on a single client, because both HTTP 1.1 and HTTP 2 allows you to do that. Then we have the concept of a pool, which is a group of clients, and we have the concept of an agent, which is a group of, which is multi-host. Okay, this is the architecture of Undici. Now, I think I have some slides, so if I have just a second. I have a slide for that. Let me fetch it very quickly. I'm sorry for the back and forth. Yeah, let me fetch it. Okay, that's fine. That was fun. Okay. Okay, Undici. Here we go. Okay. So let me get that. I fetched it. Okay, so let me get that again. Okay, it's good. Okay, here we go. So this is essentially the architecture. We have a dispatcher abstract, then a dispatcher base, and then we have a block of clients. There is the agent, the pool, and the client. Now we have also the concept of a balance pool. The balance pool, what is used for? What is useful for? It's essentially a backer load balancer based on some papers, and this is used by I think this is based on some papers that a long time ago we discovered, because there is a lot that can be done in selecting what socket to use, given the state of the system. So, and that uses some advanced science to make a good selection, while pool does a more naive solution. Okay. However, balanced pool will mean it also needs to know each single host in which you are connecting to, which is not possible usually. So that's why that's true implementation. Anyhow, this doesn't matter. The important part is that we have the concept of dispatchers. Okay. Dispatcher can be extended wrapper, wrapped and so on, using a concept called interceptors. Interceptors allow you to wrap a dispatcher and do all sorts of things with it. For example, we have a retry interceptor for automatic retries. We have there is a DNS cache interceptor for caching DNS requests. We have the cache interceptor to implement DNS caching, and a lot of things, a lot of similar things like that. It's very flexible. You can essentially implement it. It will be very straightforward to also add HTTP3 support at some point in this kind of system. okay? So something that makes it Undici peculiar in this sense is we use LLHTTP, which is the same native library, but via WASM, not via the native add-on. And yeah, that's peculiar because it means that it won't work in jitless mode. So when Undici is run in jitless mode, when the node is running in jitless mode, it does Undi fetch is not available. Okay. Now the question comes of a various point. So there is various intercepting requests. One is well, myself, Robert, a few others that are in the node team, we all believe that HTTP request is not really good for production use cases, mostly because if you fix a bug, there is a very high risk of 10 other popping out. So it's very hard to fix and maintain, okay? Also, it's which basically there is a lot of people at this point working on Undici. If we open it up, okay, if we open Undici, okay, you will see that it's very active. In fact, it's a very active repository. Okay, you can see it in, is it inside? You can see it very, you can see here, we got a lot of people. Let's put, I don't know, 1 month, and it's very active. We have a bunch of people working, contributing, pushing things out, and so on and so forth. So it's, as I said, is a nice little open source project. It's also very well used in the ecosystem, okay? To be clear, this is the ramp up of the last year. We can go back to maybe something like this. So it's these are the numbers that we are talking about. So these are relatively success on this project, okay? To a top of, I don't know, 76 million downloads in March, which I think has been it's been good progress in the last, I don't know, 4 years. So part of the reason for this is Node.js, as I said, Undici is the basis for fetch. Okay, now a lot of people want to, and now there are a couple of issues which point us to wanting to add Undici as a global thing in Node. Okay, embedding Undici in Node. So exposing Undici to users. Sorry, I need to. Okay. So expose Undici Node. Okay, here we have. So there is the question from 2022. Okay, and this has been proposed a long time because 77 comments like this is essentially forever. It's essentially because people are doing this. Like this is the internal mechanism that Undici is using internally to to configure the global agent for itself. And people are grabbing the current global agent and reconstructing it with their own constructor. Okay, so in order to change some configuration and things like that. Now, one of the biggest concern was about HTTP proxy, which is going to be enabled by default, thanks, Joey, in Node 24. So some of these will probably be attenuated, but there are a lot, as I said, a lot of other concerns because probably a production setup will include a few interceptors and a few configurations that are actually specific for the application being considered. Now, a few problems. Part of this is there is no, this is not very much documented. So the key fundamental question is if we don't want to document, like this is, people find this into, you know, the issue tracker essentially. So what we could is essentially add more documentation. It has been done partially. Okay, there was a PR open. I don't know if it landed. but yet, and no, it didn't. Yeah. Oh yeah, fetch docs. Yes, so these can probably land actually. Let's land up PR. No, that's what it is. Okay. Approved, no comments. Okay. So what it does, it will document the fact that you need to use a dispatcher, get to install Undici, and so on and so forth to do its job. Okay. Undici has this complete separation from the front layer, which is fetch and its own APIs and so on. Now, the problem for Undici request being marked legacy is that Undici request is low level to some extent. Okay. So HTTP request is low level, relatively low level. Undici request is essentially analog, but built on this new system. It has a slightly friendlier APIs that support promises, for example, but it's still low level to the same degree. Okay. It's super fast. Okay. If you want to bother in looking at the benchmarks, these are the latest one that I cut. Okay. This is Undici request is compared to HTTP keep alive here is more or less 2x throughput compared to that. Okay. So there is that. Okay. Which I genetically like. Now, everybody would love to have more perf on the HTTP request. Now, what can we do here? The first question is, are we okay? Like a few people are complaining that to configure fetch, you need to add an external library. This is the first question for you all. Is this a problem or not? Is this a problem we want to fix? Because if not, then a lot of things are okay and we can keep going. Okay. Yeah.
Isn't it it's not the fact that it's an internal library, isn't it? That you have to install a library that's already there?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the objection. I think, yes, that's a problem.
Well, it's not technically there already because it's different versions. So there is a version that is internal and a version that is external, which means also it's easier to update and easier for you to maintain. But yes, it's a library that is already in it.
Presumably there's version constraints there then as well, right? Because the thing that you install from NPM could at some point become incompatible with the version that's in.
There is the way we have handled it so far, we were able to make it backward compatible.
For now, yeah. But I guess at some point I might.
I have a good feeling that we will be able to keep it going for a long time.
I guess for me as a user, it just feels weird. Like, you know, I don't feel like I've ever had to do that with any of the stack really. Like something's here, I have to install something else. Assume
just to clarify, every single production node.js system that I worked on had to install custom HTTP agent in it to configure the one on core, and they're not using the one in core. So it's not, it does not have any difference on that side of things. Okay, I have not seen an application, a production application, a production server doing HTTP requests at some scale, not having a custom HTTP agent to configure.
I have dealt with more issues, like installing NPM or HTTP clients from NPM in production systems that I have. Like this being in core would solve so much for me, both at Twilio and at other companies I help support.
Okay, so I guess is there anybody that is strongly opposed on having that on core?
James has his hand up.
Okay, James.
I don't want to derail with the question that you just asked, Matthias. So I'll make it quick. One of the other key motivations here, just for folks to know the background of why I opened this issue in the first place, is the fact that we have a HP1 client API, we have an HP2 client API. If I can get the universe to align to actually allow me to make progress more on HP3, I do not want to do an HP3 API. And existing stuff that's there just does not allow for me to add that without risking breaking everything. So regardless of how we do this, whether it's through Unduchi or something else, we need a single HP client side API. It can work with 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, whatever. That is absolutely future proof. So it's just fundamentally a problem the way things are currently set up, because it's just not scalable. So yes, I think Unduchi is a good option. Do I think that's the only approach? No. But I think it's the best one we have. So that's it.
Follow.
Yep. Not a simple question actually. For the
Yes.
kind of power, yes. Since we understand that people need to configure their own DC, so I mean their agents when they set up the application and so forth, right? The reason why they have to install the userland version of Undici is because we don't export the API at the moment. Why don't we just expose the entire Undici that we bundle in Node for the user?
Okay, a few points. So first of all, we don't bundle the full Undici. We bundle a subset of the library. Okay.
Oh.
The reason for that is not needed, so we must create a smaller bundle. Okay. Then what we could offer is providing there are two points here. One is configuring fetch, okay, and the other one providing a single HTTP client that can work across all sort of node versions. Okay, so on the configuring fetch, what we can do is literally just expose somewhere the HTTP the agent of Undici and the various options that are there, and that will do the trick essentially.
Okay.
This is one.
Yes.
Okay. The other one that James said is you will need fetch would work, okay, but fetch has a lot of constraints on first of all on performance, okay, due to what 2G streams and promises, as well as all the mixing up of layers happening over there. So that is that is problematic. Okay, so yes, that is the key point. So yeah.
I mean, if nobody's, but if we expose the entire Undici, forget about the bundle size for now, but we expose the entire Undici, eventually people can use the full-fledged client without having to use the fetch API eventually.
Yes.
Can we do that? How much will impact the bundle?
Not much, to be honest. I don't expect it to will grow that much. Okay, because I would not like I can. So to do that, okay, we need to do a few things first. Okay, talking about steps that will need to happen. So probably before exposing it in core, I would stabilize the do another pass on the dispatcher API, so it can be essentially it needs a little bit of work. We did some changes in V7 to support a few use cases, including HTTP caching, that work great. It needs a little bit more cleanup. Then after that is done, I think it's possible to expose it. To be honest, I just don't see why not. The fundamental, there's a few points that are, I think, critical. Okay, is one is docs. Okay, Undici has horrible docs, as perceived by everybody. Like, it needs work, okay? We have no, dogs are horrible, and putting it in core will make the dogs even more problematic. So how do we do that? These questions, okay? Then there is the question of, are we keeping it exposed as via dApps? Okay, so you can always still use it from the external dependency, okay, or not. Sorry, we keep it in dApps, okay, or we just lifting the code and making it internally. So
It's not too much, it's not too much work. Then you have
Yeah.
to reconcile every time you make a release.
yeah, exactly. Well, you know, there's questions. Those questions are important. Okay.
Otherwise, if you want, I also have an alternative proposal, which I'm not sure if it's viable or not, but if you are worried about what the user need to do on user land, which means that install their own version of Woodish and eventually incur into compatibility problems with the one that is bundled with Node. An alternative thing, which would be probably faster and easier, would be to provide an API for them to use their bundle version of their installed version of Woodish as the fetch implementation of Node. I mean, as a swap function. So you don't have compatibility problems.
So you mean, no, sorry, you mean a swap function in Undici?
No, in Node. So basically in Node you can say, use these require Undici, local Undici version that I have as the one that is used by Node for fetch. And that's it. But via the different approach.
No, I don't understand, sorry.
If you're worried that people think about, for instance, in here you use Undici 8, which is not compatible with the one which is in Node 24. User want to customize it with agents, reply, whatever.
So this is a known problem, as I
No.
said. Right now,
No, I mean for the future, me not for
sorry, right now the architecture of Undici is such that with is built in a way that right now we have Undici 7. Undici 7 can be installed inside and used for fetch in Node 18, Node 20, Node 22. Okay. Node 18 is based on Undici 5. Okay. Node 20 is based on Undici 6. Node 22 is based on Undici 6.
And they will never be incompatible at any time in the future.
It's not. It supports a mechanism to detect compatibility and choose what to use.
Which means that, for instance, if in a couple of
So
years,
it's work.
I also know it works. I remember Robert telling me that. But the thing is that, let's say in 3 years from now, say you have a dispatcher version 5, you still have to you still want to support all the 4 previous versions.
Absolutely not. We only support the version of a node that are in supported at that time that the version is released. So when Undici will come out, we will cut support for Undici V5.
That is not needed. I agree. Yes. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So the compatibility problem is not that big of a question in that side. Okay, James,
Yep.
you had your hands up.
Yeah, just one point that I want to make sure I didn't forget to raise. Just recently in Winter TC, there was a discussion about the possibility of the runtimes getting together and standardizing the API for this agent mechanism. If we did have a standardized API for that, then splitting some of these things up between the runtime or dependency is a little easier. So just something that we might want to work towards.
And to be honest, I don't expect it to. So I didn't see it. Okay, the proposal. So if you have a link,
yeah, there's not a concrete proposal yet. It came up as was one of the things that we may work on.
I have essentially 2 concerns. Okay. One, Winter CG now, or Winter TC, has become a pay-to-play group. So this is my, yes, it's now part of ECMA, so it's pay-to-play. Sorry, sorry to state the obvious, okay? In order to be there, you need to pay the money at ECMA. Okay,
I mean,
that's the answers that I was given. I asked, where are you going? This is, oh, join ECMA. Okay. Sorry. I am aware. I can join anytime.
The committee has is a much more open working mode than that, and anyone can participate in discussions to drive these things forward. So.
The second part is, well, I would be happy to answer. I have a very, very strong feeling that if we had to support that proposal, okay, we will essentially need to implement fetch from scratch. Unless it's totally opaque. But if it's totally opaque, then it makes no sense. So I don't expect us, like you want to support that proposal, it means rewriting fetch from scratch. Okay, basing it entirely on what2g strings, which in turn would mean for us to rewrite what2g strings in C++, okay, and provide a direct net layer on top of with no conversions, okay. All of this is possible to do. It's just a gargantuan amount of work. I have no. My overall question is who will pay for it? Like who will be the volunteer to put in, I don't know, a year plus amount of work into making it happen. I have no problem in saying we throw away the Undici implementation of fetch and rebuilt it entirely on top of a completely different native stack. But I have absolutely no idea who would pay for it. So this is my main concern. So, James?
Oh, I am just saying one with Winter TC, like I said, there is no concrete proposal right now. So and nobody's talking about re-implementing anything. What the discussion was just coming up with a standard API, not changing implementation of stuff. And it should be possible that Undici would be able to implement that API under whatever mechanism that it's currently doing. Right? It's just an extent, a different API.
Okay, let me.
And the Undici agent could influence that actual proposal in ways that makes it pretty aligned. So, I mean, I mention it only because there is the discussion that is starting, not because there's concrete work that requires a duty to change. It would not at this point.
Okay.
All that's very premature.
So let me explain. So patch. So what does a custom agent do? Okay, a custom agent typically is something that works at the TCP level and does something before and control the low level HTTP. So for example, you need a custom agent for doing proxy, okay? For proxy, you need a custom agent, okay? How does HTTP proxy work? You create a TCP socket, a TLS socket to the parent, to the proxy server, and then you move inside that single socket multiple requests. And then those sockets are, and then the HTTP proxy unpack that, receive those requests and then route them where they need to go. Now this is a lot of streams work, okay? So unless the agent is completely opaque, and this is what Undici does internally, okay? And in order to be fast, we are in essence, we have no streams at all. No, it does not use any node streams. It doesn't. We invented our own thing to build the system. Now, this is a lot of very complex code. Okay, I don't expect I don't expect that this kind of system could be essentially wrapped around an external agent. Might be possible, might be not. So then we might be at the point of, if that proposal comes through, it will probably be very hard. It could be very hard for us to join, to implement it, if not impossible. Okay, I'm saying, I am saying, and if we expose the Undici API, then it will come a time where these will, we will need to make some decision there. Okay. So, does it make sense, James?
I think a lot of this is premature, because we don't know what direction that discussion will go, what inputs there will be to it, what any kind of shape to that API may be. It literally just came up as this is something that we probably want to work on, but that was it. If this is needed in core, I know that Dino needs it, I know that Bun needs it. So it does, warrant at least some coordination. So just something to, I mentioned it only as a direction to work towards, not something that needs to shift to any kind of directions in the actual implementation now. Okay, so
well, to some extent it does. If we decided to expose Undici in core, then we are subjected to our LTS approach. Okay, so it means that we will essentially long term be able to not have this API, or have this API depending question mark.
that's not the new, we're gonna have async local storage forever, even though we're gonna
Okay, perfect. Then if that's the case, then yes, we can ignore this for now and wait for this to be a thing, and try to influence it a little bit so that it doesn't blow up for us. But yeah, okay. That makes sense. So the last point that I have, so to what I gather so far, we want to have Undici exposed in core, at least the agents, okay, and as well as Undici request.
Pretty much everything. What is left?
No, there is a few other APIs that we added as experiment, me and Robert. We had fun. At some point, we had fun. We added multiple APIs that are still there and supported. But frankly, I would leave question mark. So we have a bunch of them. So we have Undici pipeline, Undici stream, Undici request, and Undici dispatch.
All of them. I mean, I've used all of them, and they're all useful.
The only one, frankly, the only two that make sense are Undici request and Undici dispatch. The Undici stream and pipeline are useless at this point, from my point of view.
My suggestion for your own mental health would be remove from Undici, and then you expose in node. You also remove from the main Undici if they're useless.
Yeah. We plan to. Instead stream and pipeline, we plan to ditch them. At pipeline, at least, is useless. Stream might have some helpful things. So
what is the difference between the two? Stream is to have a readable, basically.
Okay, Undici stream, okay, is, here we go. Let's open it up. Okay, it was meant to be a slightly faster version of Undici request, in which you can pass return straight a string writable for the body if you wanted to send a body. That being said, it didn't turn out to be faster. Or we were able to make Undici request as fast as this, so it makes no sense.
Okay, and the other one?
Pipeline?
Yeah.
No, pipeline is just a bad API.
Nice. Okay,
Like, it's just a web API.
I have another question. Earlier you said that Undici, the way it is
Yeah,
run,
you should let me show you what you
Oh,
can
yeah.
do with pipeline. With pipeline, it's compatible with the pipeline from node streams. So you can technically do things like this.
oh God.
I'm showing, I'm telling, okay, I'm not saying this is good. This is, I'm saying this is, it exists.
This is a whole spaghetti.
Okay, it's, this is not like, probably only Ronang and myself, Robert Nagy and myself understand this, how to use this API, so maybe.
I do have, and so yeah.
Yeah, okay, James?
If my hand was still up, it shouldn't have been.
Okay,
James.
perfect, yeah, sorry for the sleepiness, and then the early morning. Okay, so I think this is a good takeaway.
Just one last question, Matteo, if I can.
Okay.
You said that basically in the Git-less mode, so GIT, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
We cannot use Undici for
Yes.
WebAssembly.
Yes.
It's not available.
WebAssembly is not available in Git-less mode in V8, and therefore there is no Undici.
Is that a common mode, Git-less, or is just for? Is it common to use it in Git-less mode or not?
No,
Pretty much useless then, the concern.
I would not.
Okay.
I would not bother too much,
I
but
think also the TypeScript support has the same problem.
But the
The
TypeScript-
dependencies that are based on WASM.
so there is with Undici, we could technically have an opportunity, okay, if we wanted to bring it in core to use LLHTTP from core.
Yes.
Okay, that could be possible.
Oh, again, that bridge is gonna, I think that we are wasting a lot of performances on that bridge.
Oh, I am 100% sure that
So-
like to be clear, the Undici implementation of the Undici wrapper in WASM of LLHTTP is faster
Yeah.
than the C++ bridge that we use in Node for parsing HTTP. Okay, to be clear where we stand on that topic. Okay, so it's
I mean, also to clarify people, I'm technically still willing to finish the Milo, which was the supposed replacement parser for HTTP, which is close to be unmaintainable. And when I finish Milo, I will only provide, because I was asked to, will only provide the WebAssembly version. So that C++ bridge that we have nowadays for HTTP will disappear forever once we eventually set Milo as the default parser. So I would not rely on the C++ bridge in the future. That's my
no. In case it will be a new C++, like because to achieve this performance, we use a different API.
I can already also, in that case, I already have Milo ready for C++. Because Milo is nowadays I don't have Milo ready because when I try to use in WebAssembly mode, I lose performance for something that I still have to investigate. C++ is already faster.
Yes,
So in
but
that case-
it's there are compilation questions for some architectures.
Which was that's not the dismantle. Then we have another problem now.
Okay.
Marco, you confirmed that when you were evaluating Amaro, Rust supports all the architecture that we support nowadays in native.
It has, even if it did support them with the same stability, I think someone has to volunteer to add the Rust tool chain to
That's the only issue.
machine, and that's the biggest issue. So
That's the
what
only
I did is compile it
Okay.
on a separate repo, which is Amaro. We compile it to WASM, and then
I mean, to be honest,
actually we use a Docker image. We use a Docker image.
Yeah, we use the Docker. So
to compile.
basically, what happened was that Michael Dawson
Yeah.
and the IBM team, IBM Red Hat team, whatever, standardize all these libraries, and they, based on the work that we originally done in, so Undici are ready to do that compilation using the Docker image, and then they take that work and they take that image and generalize the approach. So then that system is used for your thing, for Undici,
Yes,
for
one Docker image with all the dependencies that we need, and we build everything in that Docker image.
but now you build to WebAssembly.
Yes,
Would you build to a static library? Yes, in theory, right?
probably yes, but
I mean, do you use any use a cargo?
yes, but we since we ship it also as an npm library, we need.
That's a different thing, but eventually we could do.
We could, yeah.
Okay. So in theory, we can do if you want. In bitless mode, I can eventually introduce Milo in network
Okay.
mode. That's
We can, so, okay, anyway,
I need the
this is a question, okay? Then I have a second question for everybody. Last for the topic. I think we made good decisions here. So I would be very happy to do that, okay? I look at any tracking issues for this, so we can get that system going. We need to decide how we are exposing a lot of details, but you know, this is going to be future work, okay? Now, the last question that I have is for the group. Do we want as Node, okay, where is it? Do we want as Node for fetch to use HTTP2 is available by default or not?
if I may, it also brings a follow-up question that I have, which says, if we decide yes, shall we also mark HTTP.request as legacy as well? Because we have the same maintainability issue in HTTP2.
Yeah, but HTTP request is useless. Essentially, it's very bad. We can't mark it as legacy because that's what HTTP 11 does use underneath.
Sorry, say that again, I'm lost.
So 11 uses HTTP2.request
Really?
underneath to implement the thing because 11 HTTP2.request is very low level. So it's essentially being very low level. You can use this for this stuff, okay? And the only problem is HTTP.request being both high level and low level at the same time with no layer in between that makes it impossible to maintain long term.
Okay,
but HTTP2 because HTTP2 has the concept of a session, and our HTTP2 client exposes the session so that essentially the session maps to an Unix client. And then, yeah.
So I would say long term, the goal is to have one client and one server constructor and
Yes.
so if we do, maybe long term, we can get rid of like we can unexpose the HTTP2 request and like say we just
well, or it can stay there as legacy.
Yes.
I think actually the way is in semi-legacy mode, the HTTP2, right?
No, it's not. It's maintained. We fixed bugs recently even.
Yeah, but we don't have new features. Is in
We don't have
It's
new
not-
features because we don't have new features because there is nothing.
Yeah, that's what it's technically a feature complete maintenance mode, basically. That's the pretty much
It's feature complete. It's not
Yeah.
like the point is HTTP2 as a spec. I don't know, James, if you want to add anything, but was essentially a botch spec because it was a lot of complexity without with a lot of improvement for CDNs, but very low improvement for the servers. Okay, and even for CDNs, the questions on how much improvement you're making it's very questionable. Okay, the stats are not great, specifically in lossy environments. The HTTP2 is very bad. Okay, because of head of line blocking in TCP, still based on TCP. HTTP3 will be based on UDP and Quick and so on and so forth, making it not having those problems. So it's one in theory, it fixes all the problem whenever we will get HTTP3.
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, I mean, it'll trade one set of complexities for another. The fact that with HP3, there's just the node process has to do so much more to support quick. But at least on the HTTP semantic layer, they are identical. So as long as we're working towards this goal of having a single HTTP API rather than multiple, whatever we need to do to get there, I'm happy with. Right. I just, it's just not sustainable. We can't have HTTP requests do all these other things. It doesn't work. So
makes total sense. Okay, it's okay, good. So question for the room: do you want HTTP2 enabled by default in core or not? And if so, is it a Semver major or Semver minor change?
Yes. And
what what do you mean available by default or on by default?
Okay, so available by default would mean if you're connecting to a TLS server, it will send the HTTP2 ALPN.
Oh,
And it will switch to HTTP. It will upgrade the socket to HTTP2 naturally instead of relying on HTTP1. So it's
Okay.
based only for HTTPS connections, okay? Not for HTTP, normal HTTP, only plain text is going to be used only for HTTPS connections. If the target server advertises that there is HTTP2 support, it will use HTTP2. Otherwise, you will use HTTP1.
is there a flag to this tool?
Have you implement?
Hmm?
Have you implemented the alt service and DNS based discovery?
Sorry, what?
Have you
theory,
implemented the alt service and DNS based discovery mechanisms? Or is it just probing? with
DNS?
the
No,
ALPN?
I think it's based on the HTTPS. The HTTPS LPN.
Okay, so it's just probing with
so
that.
there's-
Okay,
There's some magic bytes at the beginning that are sent to the server.
No, it's so when the TLS connection is created, it advertises the protocol.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't use the.
There is one in let me look up. There is one in HTTP that says out.
Yeah, no, we don't do that.
Where you go?
No, I don't think so. So here,
I think at the very least, we would want to also support, or, and this isn't blocking for making HP2 on by default, but I think we would also want to have like alt service support. There's ways for an HP1 server to basically advertise that it has an HP2 endpoint in an alternate location.
What are those kind of splits?
And there's also ways of advertising it in DNS.
I think like most platforms, I think except us and Python, do this. Like we do like Java and Go and those like they have the behavior Matteo suggests. I don't know a lot of complaints about that from users. So I think we need to like I'm for the idea of doing like HTTP2 in TLS by default. Like I understand the concern about breaking, but usually when like other platforms make breaking changes, we do hear about it. And I don't remember anyone complaining. I don't think we.
Just to clarify, this is how it works. Okay, when it does a TLS connect, it specifies the LPM protocols, and we pass H2 in here.
By order of priority or not? Not right.
That would be the default.
Basically, we will send it out, then the server can decide what he wants to use. Okay. And so here, so we do the TLS. Okay, it returns the socket. Okay, then this is being called by here. So it's connect. So be connector. Okay, this is connect. Okay, and then we go okay connector. Okay, here you see it's we get the socket. Okay, once we get the socket, it does, depending on the LPM protocol that is selected by the socket, it chooses which one of the implementation. Jane, Alexander?
Yeah, I was just going to like say, as an end user of this, I think there's quite a lot of value in just having as much symmetry with what browsers do as possible. Like we made a comparison with Python and Java. I don't really want to have to internalize any special casing for Node here if possible. So yeah, if the defaults can just basically follow the same protocol as the browser for this protocol selection, that'd be useful.
Okay, is it Paolo?
Yeah, about myself, I'm in favor of enabling by default, but I strongly suggest that we provide a global setter or getter if people want to disable at some point.
This goes into the question of exposing Undici and so on and so forth.
Because Undici has a global API for this.
You need to create a custom agent and so on and so forth. So yes.
No, I would make it simpler in that case. In the node case, since the user if the user just uses fetch, for instance, right? without accessing any Undici internal, I would provide a simple API saying set HTTP to enable by default false.
This is, it's very hard, it's going to be very hard to do in practice.
How do you enable by default this?
So in order to enable HTTP2 right now, there is this, when you create an agent, okay, you need to pass allow H2 flag.
Oh, I see what you're adding.
So here you have the allow H2 flag. Here you need to specify this allow H2 header.
So that
H2 options. So you create a new agent that support this.
so okay, so eventually that API should create an agent to replace the default agent.
Yes.
Oh, that's convoluted. And can you change Undici to calculate this value at runtime or not? Rather than you having a static value?
Not that easy.
Not that easy. Okay.
Not that easy because it fundamentally changes some properties of the client. So if you are starting to talk to a certain server using HTTP 1 and you want to switch to HTTP 2, then it's a huge mess.
Okay. The least we can do, put in the docs if you want to disable HTTP by default, is here's how you do that.
Okay, so
That's easy.
question is, do you think Undici got HTTP2 support stable in the late Undici v7, which is what is going to be in Node 24? Okay, is anybody opposed to get Undici to allow HTTP2 in a minor in the 24 live? The December major cut is already passed.
If you expose Undici as experimental, you can enable in a minor release.
No, I mean, we are not exposing, like, there's two different, I'm talking about two different trends, okay? The third option is we only expose HTTP2 by default in Node 25 in fetch, okay? Or we expose HTTP2 by default in only when Undici has become exposed in Node Core.
Yeah, I think we should be opt-in and then set as default. Right now, it's too late to do it in 24 and it will probably break some people or because
We are too close to 24 to test properly.
yes.
No, but the question is, it's like questions like it's technically subtle, okay? Because in theory, there is no difference.
But in practice, there is difference and it break people.
In practice, there is difference in terms of the kind of production load that they will see on their server, okay? For certain things, Undici HTTP2 is better, for others, it's better HTTP 1. So it's very hard to say use one or the other based on you need to know your system, essentially.
The problems are misconfiguring internal servers.
Right.
I guess I'm just thinking back to it. I don't remember which node major version it was, but there was a change in like the DNS resolution order to put localhost IPv6 in front of IPv4.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a major version change, but I'm just thinking that was quite painful for us. And I think if we were to promote internally on a minor version, HTTP 270 switch, similar kind of fallout. So as much as I'd like progress, I think it seems kind of major.
Okay, so
Yeah,
okay.
major.
Perfect. I'm taking notes. So it's next major of node we target essentially for node 26. Let's put it this in this way. It needs to be there.
Yeah, we use 25 to test it.
Yes,
And
yes,
then-
yes. But then it will lead to end users in node 20. Okay.
I mean, if people ever test the odd version of Node, just saying, but whatever.
Yes, but because we know that they won't.
Yes,
So
that's the problem.
Just a thought, but like, what about having an optional opt-in period where people can sort of like?
It's already there. Like if
What I mean is like with the announcement that this is going to become the default in.
oh yeah, okay, yeah. Making an announcement now. Okay, makes sense.
So then people can kind of get ahead of it and make sure that they're compatible before a major version comes and they're just suddenly on the back foot.
Do you mean like node 24 having experimental HTTP2 default or something? And then, so it's like, this is what it's going to be like in 26, but.
You could provide a CLI flag that enables that right now so people can test with it.
Technically, we can.
Yeah. Maybe that's the best approach. So we make an announcement, you provide a CLI flag, you play with that, and eventually we enable it by default at some point.
Okay. Makes sense.
This is a problem that I identified. Well, make it version.
Which also, it's also useful because then in node 25 and forward, we can keep the flag so that people can disable it if they want to.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Perfect. Think I'm good. Is there anything else that anybody from remote want to add?
No, I would say that HP3 will be back on track once we are fully up on OpenSSL 3.5 and some other work progresses in NG TCP2 to use OpenSSL 3.5. And, just because we need to keep it exciting, that means all of the underlying stuff is going to change, and none of this stuff is going to work without significant changes to incorporate UDP and Quick. So, just more fun to look forward to.
Really fun. Okay.
Richard has, isn't
I'm good. I think we covered everything. Oh,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, just on the OpenSSL front, I was looking at so James and someone else did notice that just trying to replace OpenSSL 3.5 and the node source tree, wasn't compiling out of the box, and I did start looking at that, but then got distracted by the CI fun. So I am hoping to go back to trying to get OpenSSL a PR to update OpenSSL in Node with trying to work out how to fix the GUIP or config whatever is broken when we just swap the in-source trees over. So yeah, it's just as an FYI, I'm looking at it, but obviously if anyone else wants to look at it, don't let me stop you. But yeah, OpenSSL 3.5 is one of the things that's of interest to me and my team to get into a future version of Node. I mean, it's not going to make 24, but shortly after, hopefully.
Okay. Richard, let me know if I can help. I'm hoping within a week or two to dedicate pretty much a whole week to it.
Okay.
Okay. I would probably need a volunteer at some point for docs, 12-bit docs. I'll poke people. Poke Node.js collaborator for volunteers for docs. Let's see if somebody shows up. Okay. Amazing. Thank you guys for the long for the trip down the rabbit hole of fetch and indexing. I don't know if you are familiar with some of it. Hopefully, you're more familiar with it and the challenges ahead. Okay, great. Yep. Amazing.
So quick announcement about lunch. It is served with everybody else. We don't have a special one for us like we did yesterday. So please just get in line with everybody else and yeah, enjoy.
Do we want to do go to the rooftop now or after lunch?
Let's do it later.
We probably will take a photo at the rooftop. There's like killer wheels at the rooftop.
All right, now we'll do it later. Definitely want to get into the lunch.
Yes. That's one of the.
And they're like, you know, I know it's not faulty on the wall. You know, it's accessible. Stuff to say. But like, I think it's, you know, exactly.